Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Take me out. Like,
Right.
I will be bedridden. So I had my husband do the Rife machine, doing topicals, doing the frequencies. 3 days, the MRSA was gone, no antibiotics.
Wow.
My kids, they got whooping cough. I did the pertussis frequencies with my Rife machine, gone within 2
Nice.
days. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had read everything on every childhood disease, what if it's bacterial, if it's virus, if it's all this. And it knocked it out. Like, it knocked it out within days of good nutrition, finding the pathogen, finding the frequency for that pathogen. And I was like, I never need to take I never need to take a pharmaceutical or go in for dental. I mean, I was so pissed at the medical mafia that I was like, I have my device. I just need to do good nutrition, good hygiene, have my Rife machine, and I can maybe one day hold my grandbabies in my arms in my mom's rocking chair.
Wow. Well, it's an incredible thing. I'm relying on this thing to take the place of radiation as they want to radiate me to kill my cancer. And I believe it's working. I'm working on a number of different frequencies, and I feel something happening. And this thing, I've got this giant softball sticking out of my neck, and it's not an easy thing to turn around. It's been growing in me for a couple of years, and I'm in a major battle right now. It's pushing back, and I'm pushing back on it, but I feel it getting weaker and me getting stronger. And I know this machine's got a big part to do with it for sure.
Oh, it made me so happy to set that up and have you try it. And I pray for you all the time, because I just know the healing that I experienced from it and how I use it to this day. I get serious infections. I had a life-threatening pneumonia infection that killed my sister last Christmas.
Right.
I saw her and witnessed her being medically murdered at the hospital. Traumatized me. That trauma of watching that, and um, set my own immune system from
Oh
that
yeah.
traumatic experience, set my immune system upside down. I ended up getting, in like 3 months later, pneumonia, and I was on my deathbed. I felt like I was going to die. And I was rifing, and I was trying to, I kept on thinking it was a bacterial. So that I was doing bacteria frequencies, because I was
Yeah,
thinking,
yeah.
oh, it's this, that. Do you know what ended up turning my health around? Is when I changed to, because I had been reading so much on parasites, I
Yeah.
started doing parasitic frequencies and
Right.
therapies, like different things. And once I changed it from viruses and bacteria to parasites, my health turned around. I didn't feel like I was going to die. And I'm
Yeah.
talking like 4 days of serious, my I was that infection I thought was going to kill me, like it did my sister. And I
Wow.
told my husband, I do not want to go to the hospital. I want to die in my own bed without all these tubes and machines. And I don't want to be blown up with pharmaceuticals. I don't want
Right.
a big hospital bill. I'd rather die in my own bed peacefully, even if you guys don't even have to witness it. But I was like,
Right.
there's no way I'm going to the hospital.
I'm right with you. I'm right with you. You just even go into the doctor's office, you're like, you feel it. It's like going to court. There's this just weird energy there. It doesn't, and there's some good, kind and loving people there that genuinely want to help. It's not everybody
No,
uh,
I'm not going to say they're bad people. We have lots of family who are
yeah,
doctors and nurses.
my
The
sisters,
reality
yeah,
is they will never bite the hand that feeds them, and they believe in their
true.
training, and they believe that
Exactly.
so it's a brainwashing, and you can't,
Exactly.
I can't hate people for believing in what they believe in.
Right.
But,
Just like
you
you
know,
believe in what you believe in, and I believe in what I believe in, and nobody has a right to challenge that. I mean, you can show me evidence that something's different, and if I'm open-minded, I might look at it, but my belief system is mine, and yours is yours, and everybody is entitled to it, even if it's wrong. And that's a problem with free will and freedom.
right? It really is. So all I can say is, I, the summary of my health journey and what I have done to help others from vaccine injury. I've seen miracles of children and mothers and people vaccine injured when I share with them the strategies for detoxification, and I share with them nutrition, and I share with them, frequency-based medicine to, you know, to as a tool for pathogens. And here's the thing. We think pathogens are found in nature, and they are. But we have decades of DARPA building weaponized pathogens. And there are many scientists that have blown the whistle on how dirty pathogens are in the vaccine, contaminating our blood, and they're sleepers. They're the Epstein-Barr virus. I mean, the Lyme disease. Like, there's so many different the HIV virus. I mean, things causing autoimmunity and causing cancers and causing, AIDS, which I don't call it AIDS. I call it VAIDS. It's vaccine. Um, it's a vaccine induced autoimmune where your body can't fight infections, and they die from the same way that people with AIDS do. And they say, oh, it's HIV, and it's not HIV. It is these weaponized pathogens that they build in laboratories, and these, when you understand how vaccines are made, they will never be clean. They will always have pathogens that they cannot, or not just pathogens. You're talking animal DNA fragments. You're talking about aborted baby fragments, because the vaccines changed in the 2000s, where they moved away from egg cultivating viruses on the monkey's kidney cells and the egg cells and um, the different animal cell lines that they were using to cultivate the vaccines before 2000. By the time of 2000, they basically moved all the vaccines, and mind you, they skyrocketed to over like 24 vaccines on the childhood schedule. And most of those vaccines were using aborted fetal cell tissue to grow the vaccines. And it could
Wow.
be, no, they don't tell you
Oh,
what does these boy cells in a woman, in a girl's body, or what are these cells, these DNA fragments of girls, aborted fetal girls, doing in a boy. Like, they don't, nobody's talking about the dangers of this, because
right.
they're purposely omitting it. There's so much scientific fraud and sin of omission and lack of integrity, and it's all based on scientific consensus and not the scientific method, and they
That's a
gaslight.
whole conversation that I'd love to have with you, because I've been talking about, information and what drives it, what makes it legitimate. And, they talk about science as being objective, but, you look at who's paying for it, and you generally get the results that benefit that. And that, if you look at the history of studies and funding, and when things get rushed or bypassed, or all the different things that happen, COVID was just an example of that on a large scale, where we live in a world where you can't hide stuff as well as you could 50 years ago, and they had to reckon with some of it. But the point is, science is there's two big problems with it. And again, I'd love to have a deeper discussion with you about this as another episode. But number one, my biggest problem with medical science is that they will forsake all the harm that might come to accomplish a thing. And, the Hippocratic Oath is supposed to be do no harm. And they don't care about that. They will say, well, we're going to accomplish this. We're going to give you a chance at a life, and it might destroy you, but we're going to go ahead because you might get this outcome. And they do this, with you mentioned interferon. That's one of the most horrible. I know a few people that have gone through interferon treatment for various diseases, and it's horrible. It's horrible. And every chemotherapy and every radiation treatment, they sell them up going, oh, it's just targeted now. They just put a little pinprick in you now, and it's just this thing. But they don't tell you is what's it doing, and the fact that, oh, it got this one spot. Well, what else did it do? If you know anything about radiation, it doesn't just go away, and it doesn't just like, oh, flickered and it's out. It's not like that. And the results. Then you talk about like what you just mentioned. You're putting DNA, like just how they do with these seeds and plants, and inserting little bits of genetic code so that they get this thing. Well, the problem is, even though they've, mapped the genome or whatever, they know where the parts are. They don't have any idea what most of it does. And the most importantly is every single one of us is unique, and every single fetus and every single cell is unique. And so they can't blanket go, well, we're just going to do this and then put it over there. Every single time they do it, different things can happen, and different things do happen, and they don't take responsibility for any of it.
No. So I want to just speak to this, and I'm sure we've been going on a long time here. I
Oh,
don't
I'm
know.
going to break this into a couple of episodes. It's okay.
Okay. Well, I do want to speak to this then. Joe, the in about I want to say um in college, I read one of the most profound books that really set me on a course to question and challenge all abuse of authority. I don't care if you're a PhD. I don't care if you're a scientist. I don't care if you're an MD, because really what I learned at Berkeley was that I read this book called The Theory of Scientific Revolution by Thomas Kuhn. The best book I ever read that prepared me for all this nonsense of scientific consensus that we experience. And it really comes down to, well, what are the assumptions that the experts are basing their expertise on? And
Right.
when you dive deep and dig into what the founding assumption is, you
Mhm.
will find that it's not a repeatable, testable, verifiable fact. It
Right.
is an assumption that somebody made, and it's usually a godless scientific person who thinks they are a god, who thinks they have the power, and they are
Exactly.
self-interested. They are self-interested, and they want to make tons of money off of creating a false narrative in the scientific community that turns into a business model that produces millions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, that is turned into a racket because you get government funding. So they create a marketplace for a captive market, like our children.
Well, and that's the point is, they're coming at it from a position of, oh, we're gonna, change the world. We're gonna give, we're gonna defeat this disease. We're gonna give new hope to these people who are suffering, these things that nobody's gonna say, oh, we don't want that. And, inside of it, all these treatments they have, all of these poisons, all of these therapies that they have. And maybe some of them are less toxic than others, but each one of them makes their inventor millions and millions of dollars. And that's the one key. Maybe they don't all harm you horribly, but they don't necessarily help you without harming you, and that's for sure. And then therapies that I'm working with right now that, unless you completely abuse them, are never going to harm you. And I'm talking cannabis therapy. I'm talking about ozone therapy. I'm talking about frequency therapy. I'm talking about herbal therapy. All of these different things, uh, sweat, sauna therapy, cold therapy, all of these things that there's no way, unless you completely abuse them, that they could hurt you. And I haven't had a doctor even mention any of those things to me, not to mention nutrition and sleep and stress. None of them. They haven't said a word about any of it.
Right, because there's no money in it, right?
I don't
You
bring it up. Yeah, exactly.
it,
There's nothing to
that's
sell me.
once I realized it was a complete business model and that they create captive markets like our children, okay, or I I have been I've been on a path to expose all of this and educate mothers by literally trusting their instincts, educating, because I have all the primary resources that informed me, but most
Right.
people, most women, I learned cannot handle, and most men can't even handle this level of detail. I just feel like God blessed me with this gift. And so then how do I make it bite sized to empower women to go back to fundamentals of
Mhm.
nutrition,
Yep.
fundamentals of how to fight infection, and not having to do massive interventions. I've seen literally parents destroy their children over medical interventions, and it
I,
breaks my heart. I literally weep over it.
it's true, and it happens a lot. I mean, the COVID was a huge example of all of that. Families were completely fragmented, shattered, uh, because some had a belief system that was like you're talking about, fun. Let's just work with fundamentals. Let's just be healthy, and if we get sick, we'll get through it. And others were like, do what they said, and if you don't do what you said, you're a bad person, and you can't come to my house, you can't see grandma, you can't. And then not only that, but when somebody got sick and had to go to the hospital, you can't see them. You can't have access to them. I mean, I know people whose spouses passed away and they weren't allowed to see their spouse while they were sick in the hospital.
I
And
know. It is
it's
heartbreaking.
just horrible, horrible and heartbreaking. And frankly, I this weekend I had a very powerful experience. I told you we did the peyote ceremony over the week,
Oh,
and I had just an incredibly powerful experience, and I got a glimpse of how things really are, and that's one of the things that can happen in these kinds of things. It's basically an all-night prayer circle and working with this plant medicine, and I, I know that this journey that I'm on, battling this cancer, is really just to give me the tools so that I can help people in a way that, just like what you were given, it was a horrible. I don't understand why it has to be that way, but without having the empathy, without having the credibility of saying, I did this, I experienced it, I know what you're going through, I was given the same choices you're given, and this is what I did, and this is what happened, and you can't deny it, and I can't deny it, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. I think that that's a tool that I was given as well. And it just so happens that this is the time that you and I have come together. And I believe really some powerful healing is going to come with both of our life's journeys here.
I love that we crossed paths on this. And, God, I always say God's timing is not my timing.
Right.
And, but it's about surrendering our will and to his will, and then
Yes.
being open to how he wants to use us as his instruments of love and, um, just really a deep love of what goodness he is. And I think that in our own egotistical, arrogant way, our own disconnection from the creator, that we end up in these situations where we think, we have all the answers when it really is about reconnecting to God, the creator, the
Mhm.
integrity of his design.
Yep.
Uh, you know, the human body and the design, we're such incredible creations, and the creation will never equal that of the creator. That's a maxim of truth that I have discovered, is that the creation will never equal that of the creator. So man will always be inferior to that of God, the creator. But I just want to end with this. When I was, after my second child was born, when I was most sick and ill, I had developed, training and skills at the corporate level, at the insurance level, working with big data. And, I had got sucked into that stupid 23andMe, and I got my raw data. But I took my raw data um, from that and my dad and my brothers and my husband and my child. And I built my own data analytics tool, and I pulled in data from several sources that help us understand, like there's massive databases out there with all the PMI, the public, the medical PubMeds research tied to genomic polymorphisms. And so I had all and this is data. You can't open this data in Excel. You need like an analytics big data tool to open up these files. And then, I connected and built a connection to these scientific portals of genomic data. So if you have a polymorphism, you can see all the PMI articles that connect up to your own data set. So you're looking at your polymorphisms. If you look at it with your dad, your parents' data, you can see how it transfers from generation to generation, from mother to child, or father to child. And then if you have siblings, like I had several siblings, I did analysis across the siblings to see who got what, because you usually get one pair from the father, one pair from the mother. And then, what you learn about your polymorphisms, or what I learned when I started really diving deep into genomic data and epigenetics, is that your genes are a blueprint. They are not deterministic. They actually are like on and off switches with the environment, right? So the environment will either turn on disease or turn off disease.
There's switches all throughout your code, and it has to do with longevity. It has to do with your organs. It has to do with disease. It has to do with I mean, there's
methylation, all these things.
Yes.
And so I really dove really deep into that as I was trying to come out of healing. So frequency is one thing, but when you start learning that why vaccines hurt some people more so than other people, or cancer people are when people dealing with cancer are responding to this treatment and that treatment, it really comes down to understanding where your genomic blueprint has these polymorphisms, right? They're like blueprints with errors.
Right.
And that's why your body reacted to this than that. That's why you had a cytokine storm when you were exposed to these heavy metals, or these chemicals. And when I started reading the PubMed research, I was like reading a lot of medical studies. When I was most sick, I couldn't get out of bed, and I was just sitting there nursing my second child and putting my 3-year-old in front of the TV because I couldn't pay attention to him and the baby. And I was sick, but I would just sit there and try to absorb, and I would build these programs to help me understand where I was genetically weak, because they exploit that. And certain vaccines and certain chemicals and certain this and that, I believe that they're targeted. I believe it's part of the bioweapon rollout to depopulate people. And I think there's a lot of evidence for that in the scientific literature itself. But you have to look at, why are they studying this? If you can't process your B vitamins, you're going to be more susceptible to mental health issues. So then there's just, our food is targeted, our water is targeted. And I just want to say that through all that research, and like God opened up all those doors for me, because I never would have done this all on my own. It was just like God moment after God moment about him trying to tell me that man can never replicate God's design, no matter through the transhumanism and the cloning and all this disgusting scientific biotechnology. Okay, these scientists hate God. They believe themselves to be God. They hate God's design. They want to corrupt our genomes. They want to change God's design. They want to defile God's design. And once I understood that it was all about defiling the creation of God by people who think they are gods, that I just was like, I can see it a mile away. Literally, my instincts, my hair will go up on the back of my neck, just like it did the night that that I was attacked, by
Right.
somebody coming in at, my home invasion through the window. I turned around because I had the hair standing up on the back of my neck,
Right.
and I heard a voice telling me, "You better turn around. You better turn
Uh,
around right now." And if I had not listened to that, that person would have gotten in. But I
yeah,
listened to that voice telling me to turn around, and the hairs on the back of my neck, because those frequencies and that energy of death and suffering, like people who want to harm send off frequencies. And when
absolutely.
you are listening to your body, when you are listening, your body will hear those frequencies, and frequencies transmit information. So is
Oh
the
yeah.
information good or is the information bad? Is the information harmful? Is the informational beneficial? I mean, like, those frequencies are sending information, and your body is a transmitter of frequency and it is a receiver of frequency.
Well, you've seen the work of what's the guy's name? Emoto, where
Yeah.
he did all of the photographs of water crystals, and his whole his whole work was about frequencies and how it affects the formation of water crystals. And it was incredible where just even saying certain words, certain frequencies, playing a song of one type or another, and then the water freezing at that moment. And you look at these crystal patterns, and they vary from these just beautiful, undescribable beauty to just twisted and just dark. And you're like,
Yeah, like shards.
just crazy. Like, and he was I don't know if he's still alive, but he was brilliant in finding the technology to do that, kind of like Rife in being able to create this microscope to see these pathogens that he figured out how to blow up, just to be able to see this stuff. I mean, you can know it, but when you see it and actually just look at this thing and you go, wow, these words I'm saying, we're all made of water. We're all at least 60% water, and we're saying words and we're listening to words and we're hearing sounds, and it's happening to us all the time. And what is it that we're being exposed to? What's it doing to these water molecules in our bodies? And all of that is just like, it's a lot. And I think all of it, to me, boils down to, you had your moment up on the pyramid. I had a moment up at McGee Creek looking up at the Milky Way at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I had a very similar experience without the spirits, but just that knowing that we're all so teeny and tiny, and yet we all matter. I had that moment up there staring at this Milky Way that was just like right in front of me. And the thing that I always get is that it's all possible. What we are seeking to do in educating people and making positive change, it's all possible. We can do it. And I think that's really the underlying theme of this show, about these messages, about these conversations, is you are doing work that makes you dangerous to these people. We live in a world where people have an attention span of a gnat. If it goes longer than 20 seconds, people are not interested anymore. And yet you dove deep and you read the papers and you put it all together and you laid it out and overlapped it, and you were able to find these things that are right in front of us. They're all in front of us. All this information's there. Even if they've buried a lot of it, it's there. Enough of it's there for us to do this. But people are programmed not to put the effort in. People are programmed, to get that quick hit of dopamine, to get that quick little something, and don't worry about doing the hard work and digging deep. So, Nichole, you are doing the good work, and I'm glad to be working with you. And I just see so much value that's going to be coming from the work that you're doing, the work that we're doing together. And I'm just so grateful that you're here.
Thank you, Joe. I'm just a mom.
Well, and I'm just a dad, but
Right?
but
I'm just here. I have a purpose, and for me, it's to just serve God and serve my neighbor. And that's what I've learned. And not to contribute to evil, but to expose evil.
There you go. Well, we're on the same team. I'm glad of that. And, you know, things that are not in alignment with us, look out. Here we're coming.
All right, Joe. I look forward to working with you. Have a blessed evening, and thank you for giving me a chance to share my story.
You bet. Excellent. Thank you, Nichole. We'll talk to you soon.
Good night.
All right.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.